I grew up in the military. When I was growing up, through the time I graduated high school, I lived in 10 towns and 13 different houses. Wow. Needless to say, we moved around.
Well, I was 17 years old when I went in, 5 days after I graduated from high school. So it was a shock to the system I graduated on a Thursday, got inducted on a Tuesday, and Wednesday I was in Lackland for basic training. So it was a shock to the system I had never left. I haven't been out of the state of Wisconsin in my life, okay, so I'd never been away from home.
Little background, I'm half Jewish and half Italian, and I used to get picked on for being Jewish, and I used to get picked on for being Italian, so I wanted to join the Army to toughen up and be a U.S. paratrooper.
I was going to join the Air Force because I wanted to be a machine gunner on an airplane. And I went like 3 or 4 times, and every time I went on Tuesdays, the Air Force recruiter was in a different town. They had to go around. And this Navy chief talked me into joining the Navy because the Navy had airplanes and had machine guns. So that's how I ended up in the Navy.
Well, I chose the Air Force because my dad served 20 years and I grew up in the Air Force. I served the military because I had got a lot of uncles that was in the service and kind of leaned toward the Air Force because of my dad once I decided to go in.
I was in the Navy as what we called a kiddie cruiser until I extended from 1964 through, it was 72. What I did was electronic warfare.
I was deployed on an icebreaker, which wasn't a whole lot of fun. We just shot pool, run around, chased the ladies as much as possible, and got turned down a lot. Went through the phase, like most of you guys that were in the military at that time, remember when you went downtown and you had your uniform on, you had people talk to you, not very pleasantly. And so that was just kind of the thing. Just kind of goofing around and not doing much of anything. And
I was halfway in the Pacific Ocean when the announcement came that the armistice for the Korean War they had, and that we were being transferred to Japan, and that was my relief. That is all the fellows' reliefs. So my stay was in Japan.
So I always had the best jobs, and there's a trick to it. It was have the most strapped uniform and shine boots, and that was my thing. And so I just kind of looked like I was. My uniforms were so ironed and creased, and now when you go in now, if you're going to go to combat, they always say that's the worst thing to do. Don't do that. But I did it, and there was really no war going on.
Well, I like to travel. I like going to different places. I served in Germany, and while in Germany, I took leave and went to France, England, Italy, Greece, and Copenhagen in my travels. So I like that quite a bit.
We were in security service. Everything had to be up, and everything was quiet. Like one of the things we had to be careful was that if you heard somebody talking in their sleep, you were supposed to turn them in because they would pose a security risk. And when you were in the building, all the phones were tapped.
And I think at work, everybody in the unit was there. They were more interested in making sure the equipment was ready for operations more than I was the one that fixed it. It was a group effort and all. I miss that in the civilian community. There's too much me. And in service, it's we or us.
So basic training was a breeze. Paratrooper training was tough. But it also instilled in me the drive-on spirit. When you think you're all ragged out and you can't go another inch, you can do it. It shows you how to keep on going. When the going gets tough, the tough get going. That's what a paratrooper does.
Did a lot of what they called ELINT, electronic intelligence gathering, where you would record what was in the air. But that was that area. And then I was also in what they called Combat Information Center. And I was based on a destroyer leader guided missile frigate. And we spent our time catching pilots that got shot down over North Vietnam.
One day I was walking past the CO and somebody else, and he said, "Soldier," and I turned around and he said, "What are you going to be doing for the next year and a half?" And I said, "I don't know." He said, "How about driving me around?" I said, "Okay." And that was it.
Finally studying for the exams, decided it was time to get to make some rank. And the Chief Petty Officer in the Coast Guard and the Navy is a very, very prestigious rank, and I decided that's what I wanted.
I got out and served my 4 years, came back, and at the shopping center, a person was there. He's a recruiter. 20 years later, I was 44 years old. And I told him my time in the military, and I enjoyed it and everything. And I walked away from him, had my 5-year-old son. He said, "We need you. You told us what you did. He said, we need you. We are very short in that field." And I laughed. He said, "Now you can sign up for 1 year. You've already served your service. Anytime during that time you want to get out, you've already served your time." And so I did. The year went by real quick, and I signed up for every time I signed up. The 16 years were a breeze.
This was 63. This was in the middle of Cold War time. So you had, in Germany, that wasn't that far after the Second World War. So you still had a lot of Nazi sympathizers over there, besides all the commies, okay? And all the bar girls were commies, trying to get stuff from people. We had one town next to ours that was off limits because it was full of commies. So, this wasn't Korea and it wasn't Vietnam, but it was still a war. Let's put it this way, type of thing, So, and then, of course, during the Cuban Missile Crisis, our base was the #1 focal point because we had direct line to the White House. So everything that was happening with the Russians came through us, type of thing. So it was proved interesting, okay?
I took to it because I decided this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, be in the military. And so I stuck it out for 23 years. And I went from coast to coast, down to Cuba, up to Key West, and then back to California. And I did, I think, a total of about 9 Westpac cruises, 2 of them during Vietnam. It was just fantastic for a little poor kid from the barrio.
So the best leadership training is inadvertently in the military. Somebody said, you got to get along with all kinds of people, people from every walk of life. And that's what I did. And I didn't know it at the time, but, I learned how to communicate and connect. You communicate and then you connect with the people. And if you're connected to somebody, they're saying, teach me. And so from that point on, I just feel like that was the best leadership training that I could have ever taken. And so it's helped me all my life. I love the Army has taken care of me.
Oh, I miss the friendships I gathered. I'm still in contact with, I've been retired since 1980, and I'm still in contact with 2 or 3 people, that I served with. So that was just, that's a neat thing. I like that, to keep in touch. I like to go back to the old-timey stuff, and talk about that. friendships and stuff. That's
I enjoyed very much. I spent 12 years. Loved every minute of it.